A New York study shows only 1 out of every 24 cases of physical abuse and neglect involving a senior, and 1 out of every 44 cases of financial exploitation involving a senior gets reported. We're going to talk about that next on Connecting Our Community. Stay tuned. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Connecting Our Community. I'm Karen Allen. Tonight's show is part 1 of 2 on the topic of elder and vulnerable adult abuse awareness. It's a mouthful, but we have a lot to talk about. Joining us to help discuss this topic are 2 from the State's Attorney's Office because they're working hard on this. Our first is Debbie Feinstein. Major titles to your name. Senior Assistant State's Attorney, Chief of the Family Violence Division, and Co-Chief of the Crimes Against Seniors and Vulnerable Adults Unit. Yes. I hope I don't have to say that too many times. And
Just
Brian Roslin, thank you for joining us. Chief of the Special Prosecutions Division and Co-Chief of Crimes Against Seniors and Vulnerable Adults Unit. Whew, okay, but the titles are long, but the topic is very serious, actually, because what we just said, the statistic that I just said, is pretty much alarming. It's shocking, actually. If you have relatives that are seniors, or if you see them, they're active and they're living longer.
Sure.
And I'm not so far from there myself.
Right, and the statistic you gave talked about the reporting amounts for it. One of the other statistics to think about is the growth of the senior population that we're going to see nationwide and here. The projection is that in the country over the next 10 years, there'll be a 24% increase in the size of the population over age 65, whereas for the population that's under age 65, that's only going to grow about 7%. So nationwide, the population of seniors is going to explode, and so the raw numbers of how many of these cases are happening is going to grow. And I think we have some numbers too about Montgomery counties, right, from some of our census stuff.
We do. From the census, the anticipated increase in the senior population from the year 2000 to the year 2020, it was a 74% increase actually in the senior population, meaning 65 or older. So from about 131,000 to about 227,000.
Wow.
And then if you project that out even further to 2040, you're talking about growth up to 255,000. So the way that it basically figures out simply is to think about it's an exponential growth.
It really is. I mean,
oh yeah, many, many times over.
first of all, 65 isn't old anymore. I mean, it's technically senior, and
Right.
I'm far from there, but not that far, and it's technically not even old.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people that
Right.
are, baby boomers and stuff, and living longer, healthier lives, taking better care of themselves. They're vibrant. 50 is the new 30,
Right.
or so I've heard.
At age 65, the life expectancy now, according to the most recent stuff out of the Office of Aging, is 20 years. So you're talking about that 65 is not that old anymore, and it is expected to go. How it concerns us and where it comes of interest to us in our role as prosecutors is that's the target pool for seniors that can become victims. And whether we agree that 65 is the right number or not, it's that expanding pool of people that are going to live longer, that are going to be around longer, and more of them that become targets of financial abuse and victims of the physical abuse.
And I think the fact that people are more active, particularly with the internet and an email and everything. I mean, again, it makes them a right target because they're out there, they're on social media, they're on a dating site or on a place where they can be essentially ensnared into a scam.
That's a good word,
and
because it's easily done. The
Yes.
solicitor's phone, the phone calls, for one thing, that come into every household
Right.
are ridiculous. But you
Yeah.
can get caught up in that. The people that come to your door that offer to, chop your tree down or do some work,
Yes.
and it just seems so easy, and they're right there. I wanted to also mention a lot of people are widowed, so they're alone and they need the extra help. They don't want to bother their children.
Right.
So there, I can just see a myriad of, and you already know these ways.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other ways, but I want to, of course, talk about the ways more of ways people can get scammed and stuff. And of course, we'll leave you guys at home with what to do about it and where to go, because you're.
Right.
I know that one thing I want to mention is there was a press conference in the past year or so that introduced this new unit in the State's Attorney's Office, which I know you're really proud of. And I was at that press conference, and they gave all kinds of statistics, and they talked about how you guys are doing just what you're here to talk about, really, targeting the abused physically abused as in other ways, financially, and all the things that are going on to like try to prevent it before it happens and to prosecute when it does happen. And
Right.
more prosecutors were needed, right? Because
So essentially,
This happens
our
more.
office had, which is typical in a prosecutor's office, my unit handles cases involving physical abuse and neglect and sexual abuse. Brian's unit handles cases involving financial exploitation. But what's almost unique in the elder abuse context and vulnerable adult context is that you often see these two overlapping. And so we decided, and really our boss, Mr. McCarthy, decided
John McCarthy.
to,
Yes.
to marry this together. And to say, look, we shouldn't have this as a separate, two separate entities in their own silos. We need to be looking at these cases holistically. So
Right.
when an elder abuse case comes in, even if it's physical abuse on its face, we want to be making sure that we're looking at the bank accounts and looking at the financial piece. So we have two prosecutors on our team that are specifically designated to do those kind of analyses and to do those kind of evaluations to make sure that we're seeing the whole picture.
yeah, I think that's obviously needed, and it's
Yeah.
really something that John McCarthy decided to put and the county executive decided to put the resources to doing that.
Right.
Right.
And I think part of it is the realization that this is something that we need to get out in front of because of the growth expected in Montgomery County. The prosecutors that we have, it's one from each of our teams who are prosecutors that have been involved in these types of crimes for a long time. So that Jessica Hall has a long background of dealing in physical abuse cases, and then Hannah Gleason has been on the financial team for, I guess, 8 or 10 years now. And so they come with that understanding as well. There's more to the program, though, than just adding prosecutors to it. You talked about the outreach part. That's part of why Debbie and I are here
Right,
talking
right.
in this way. We also have a program manager that is responsible for all kinds of things with the day-to-day activities of it. That's Kelly Davis, and she's done wonders since coming on to start with us in the fall at helping get the message out, but also helping us with our internal pieces of it to do.
Can we talk about what are the main types of abuse? We've given the categories. Can you guys give some examples so that people watching at home can recognize this, look at their neighbors, look at their families, strangers, whatever, and give people an idea. What are we talking about here?
I mean, there are really four very broad categories. There's physical abuse, sexual abuse, financial exploitation, and neglect. And neglect can be neglect from someone else, or it can actually be self-neglect, can be an issue as well. So those are really the things I think to look out for. And then within each of those categories, there's subsets and different things to watch out for and different red flags. And we're happy to talk about those.
Yeah,
as
we're
well.
going to get to the red flags too. But you've set the categories for abuse, as you just described. Are there a ton of cases like these in Montgomery County? How do we compare and to others? And is this something that's fast on the rise in this county for some reason, or in Maryland, or?
There's no easy answer to that. So the hard piece about it is, as we talked before about the underreporting, there's a knowledge that it's out there. Several years ago, the laws changed so that banks now become mandatory reporters of suspected adult financial abuse. And not surprisingly then, the numbers that Adult Protective Services receives of referrals for financial abuse have skyrocketed compared to what they were before for
Right.
financial abuse. But to be able to say specifically that Montgomery County is any worse than anybody else, there really aren't hard numbers to point to do that. But we have a senior population here. We have a fairly wealthy senior population.
It's a comfortable county
It
for,
is.
for those that can
Right.
afford to
And
live here.
so it is certainly a problem within the county. But to be able to say
Right.
where we are versus anybody else, I don't think their numbers exist that way yet.
What are some of the typical types of abuse cases that you actually see here in Montgomery County? More specific than the categories. Is there
Yeah.
any cases that you can point to? I remember a few myself because some of them make the papers because they're so heinous.
Yeah.
Right, and I think the ones that really sort of again that stick out are the cases where you've got someone that's in a relationship of trust with
Right.
the victim. So it could be someone that's a caregiver, it could be a family member, it could be a neighbor, it could be someone, frankly, that just sees an easy target and ingratiates themselves to the senior and becomes a vital part of their life. All the while, their intent is to scam them out financially and A recent case that I can think of was a case where a neighbor befriended an elderly woman who was actually quite wealthy and essentially assumed her care, but the care that he gave her was not such great care, and she actually significantly deteriorated physically, and he was creating barriers to people coming in and seeing the houses, literally blocked the windows so people couldn't see in. Ultimately, someone who did the gardening and the landscaping reported it because he became very concerned about why wasn't he seeing, Mrs. So-and-so so often. And
Thank goodness somebody was
it did.
paying attention.
And it turned out that not only was there the serious decline in her physical health and also some signs of physical abuse just with respect to the condition of her skin and other things. And I don't have to go into the graphic details, but some really serious stuff, like when someone sits in their own soil for a long time. There's just terrible deterioration and awful things that happen to the human body. And it turned out that there was also a significant amount of financial abuse as well. And this gentleman was trying to get power of attorney over her, and she didn't have any other living relatives. And
wow.
it's just really sad. It's really sad. It's the opportunity is seen. And someone that's on the prowl for that is just.
And hopefully he was prosecuted and.
Yeah,
it's ongoing.
It's
okay.
ongoing.
All right, that's good. Okay, let's take a short break. When we come back, we have a lot more to discuss with these two from the state's attorney's office on elder abuse. Stay with us.
When you donate goods in response to an international disaster, it's expensive.
They have to cross the sea, pass through customs, be inspected, sorted, then finally delivered.
And often they arrive too late to help, making your good intentions feel a little empty.
There is a better way.
Cash donations are fast, simple, and allow professional relief workers to purchase supplies close at hand.
Cash is best. Learn more at CIDI.org.
It's our duty to serve veterans and military families who serve their country in the most difficult ways imaginable. Together, we can say thank you in so many ways. Small acts of kindness mean more than anything. With our support, veterans and military families can face even the most difficult challenges. Let's honor their service with ours.
We are back talking about elder abuse with Brian Roslin and Debbie Feinstein, both of the state's attorney's office, handling different parts of the abuse that's going on and trying to prosecute them to get ahead of the problem. There is a task force and a bunch of agencies and people involved to get going on this. Can you talk about that task force a little bit, either one of you?
Sure. The task force has actually been around for a long time in the county, and part of what happened was a memorandum of understanding was drafted and put together to get everybody to be able to start talking. And we have Adult Protective Services, we have the police department, we have the ombudsman for it, we have the licensure departments, all government agencies who have agreed to share information with each other. Historically, it would be hard for us to learn what Adult Protective Services knows as we're trying to put together prosecution. And that task force has ebbed and flowed over the years, but then in recent years, we've re-energized that and really meet every month with that group of people to talk about cases as to where they're going with investigation for possible prosecution, but we also talk about what other solutions are, because not every case is a prosecution case. It may well be that it's a home where they don't have adequate staffing, and that's better done through the licensing of the home and somebody doing inspections to require better staffing or better training for the staffing. So it's a looking at the problem of mistreatment of seniors in a very holistic way.
And communicating between you guys has to be a huge,
right?
Because everything you read out these days, all the crises going on at various places, all has to do with a lack of communication on some basic point. So you got that going on, definitely.
And by having us sit down in a room together once a month, it makes it so much easier to pick up the phone when you need that emergency and to be able to talk to, okay, we know somebody over in the ombudsman office. We can call Eileen and say, hey, what's up with this and how can we attack this problem? So it builds those relationships that really help us a whole lot.
Good.
Right. I was going to sort of add on to what Brian was saying with respect to the task force. It meets formally once a month, but the thing that I like to emphasize is that we meet informally all the time. on an almost daily basis, we're having communications with our multidisciplinary partners, because that's critical when you're starting a case, again, not to duplicate efforts, to be efficient. We're talking about the safety and security of human beings here, and we want to make sure that we're putting the right resources into place, in real time, not waiting till a monthly meeting. And so that's when we meet formally, but we're talking every day.
Do you see a typical type of person who's an abuser? Is there more abuse between strangers or relatives, family themselves? Is it either one way or the other? And what are you seeing a lot of?
So the study that's often gets cited, the New York study from 2011, had about 46% was done by trusted people, and about 51% or so was done by strangers, which means it's about half and half,
Yikes.
roughly, in that
That's
to do it.
Scary statistic, actually.
It is, but it includes, if you think about how the definitions of trusted people can be anybody from your family, neighbors, any of the caretakers that come in, to the bankers and accountants. The strangers range from the people that are doing door-to-door work, I think you had mentioned some of that earlier, to the telemarketers, but also in the strangers category would be all kinds of the identity stuff, identity fraud that comes through the internet, where you really have no idea who the person is in Eastern Europe that is soliciting you, but that falls into the stranger category. But so it's a lot of different ways, and the perpetrators sort of fall almost evenly between them.
And I think the sandwich generation has a hard time keeping up with, that's why they're sandwiched. They have their elderly people to keep up with, which is really hard. And some people can take that person into their house, and some people can put them somewhere,
Right.
which is a whole nother, dealing with nursing homes and whatever. And then they have their kids to deal with. So it's really hard, and I think people could fall short or not have the means to take care properly, and they would be trusted, and things can get out of hand fast where you don't even notice things, happening with your relative.
And that's why I think this education and prevention piece is so important, because the reality is, you're not necessarily going to be the one giving the direct care to your family member. You're going to be entrusting someone else, whether it's a nursing home, a caregiver, someone that you ostensibly should be able to trust.
Right.
And so knowing what the signs are and what the signals are and monitoring, what's going on it's incredibly important. There's no substitute for that.
Let's do that right now then.
Sure,
What can we
sure.
talk? What can we say? I guess we'd call them red flags.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, I can speak first, I guess, to physical abuse and neglect. Really, things that if there's unusual changes in patterns and behaviors, in hygiene, sleep. Say that your elderly parent had typically played mahjong every week
Right.
or whatever. My mother's been in a game for 40 years. Say that had all of a sudden she stopped going. Without much of an explanation, or all of a sudden your elderly parent starts spending a lot of time with one person that you don't know that well, and that person again is ingratiating themselves and getting to know them, and your parent is becoming reliant on them. So that's one thing to look at, but also then the caregivers themselves, because really that person becomes the vital person. You hire someone, a home health aide or someone to be in there, and you need to be present and know what's going on. I mean, so you look for things like that. You look for stuff like where an elderly person may be confined to bed without care. You look at condition of the home, if there's decline in the home, things are not done in the way that they were done before, where the caregiver is not doing them and not keeping up. Because as we were talking about before, unfortunately, in a situation where the caregiver may have something financial to gain or be seeking to gain something financial, it may be to their advantage to have the elderly person decline in health.
Just saying that and hearing that just makes me.
It's just the
skin
it's the
crawl.
reality. It's just the reality.
Most
we
people
see
are nice,
it,
but
yeah.
but
We see it over and over again,
Right.
unfortunately, and that's why having an educated community, and really our goal with the specialized unit in the state's attorney's office with the task force, is to make Montgomery County so educated that perpetrators are not going to want to come to Montgomery County to take advantage of people here, because we're going to all be so in the know.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And you had talked some about the red flags. I mean, one of
Yeah.
the very biggest things is, as Debbie had talked about, was the changes in behavior. So if you've got somebody that could always afford to have the car washed every 2 weeks, and now all of a sudden the car is not being washed, or if somebody who's always worn the nicest of clothes every time when they went out for Friday nights, and now the clothes are falling apart and are not the same clothes they used to have. Sometimes there are perfectly normal explanations of the decline that comes with aging, but those are the types of things that can alert one to it.
And personal hygiene, I think, is a big one.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
I just remember with my grandmother, personal hygiene was a big red flag.
Right. And the other thing is sort of changes in types of clothing that they wear. If
Yeah.
somebody has always had, say, an open neck and now is wearing scarves all the time, that may be because there's bruising or other markings.
It
that
could be
they're-
just covering up,
all kinds of things.
aging chest.
Very natural things.
But
Yeah.
but you need to be aware that it may be something other than that.
Right.
Yeah.
In
So-
nursing homes, do you find a lot of sexual abuse and physical abuse? Is it specifically there, or is it other places? Is it all over the place? Can you give me an idea?
Go ahead.
I would just say, I mean, I think that there is some of this in all of those circumstances. I wouldn't point to nursing
one
homes.
thing.
And it's no
Nothing
one
against nursing homes,
thing.
but
no. And
that's what you
and I
hear.
think reflecting on what you said a few
Yeah.
moments ago, most people are good.
Right,
And
right.
they're
they're
doing
caring.
and they're caring and they're in these professions for the right reasons, and doing what they can. It's unfortunately it's needing to really be aware, as the sandwich generation people, that not everybody is, and you just need to be vigilant. Not crazy, but
Right,
vigilant.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
So
And
I'm-
I just want to tell the folks, we have a part 2 of this show as well, so we're not going to delve into the financial parts so much on this show. We'll do it with Brian on the next show. But I just want to get the word out for what people can look for. What should they do? What should they do? If somebody sees something, knows something, who should they call? How do they handle it?
Call Adult Protective Services.
Okay.
I mean, that's really
We won't be
that
giving
is
that
the
number out.
that is the main
You can
number.
get them 24 hours a day, 240-777-3000.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
24 hours a day. Don't hesitate. And I always suggest err on the side of reporting. You have a concern about someone, report it. Let the professionals, look at the situation. There are many times that these cases are ruled out, and there's, it's a determination that's made. No, there wasn't actually anything there. But better to report and have nothing be there
Absolutely.
than
Right.
to not report and to stand silent when something awful is going on.
All right, so what other, there's a police non-emergency number as well, 301-279-8000, if you don't think it's an emergency or you don't, whatever.
Right.
Obviously, it's 911, I know
Right, I was
that.
going to say, you
That's
never
the
forget that,
obvious.
because if
Someone's,
911 is there, and
yeah,
call
sure.
it if
That's an
there's
obvious one.
immediate danger, absolutely use that for things involving seniors.
When people report this, could they be anonymous, or how do you deal with that? If you need them for an investigation, they're obviously less anonymous, but
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with anonymous reporting. For situations where people are suspicious of something and concerned, there's nothing wrong with anonymous reporting. That's part of what Adult Protective Services is there for, is that they have the social workers who can follow up on it and find it. So there's absolutely nothing wrong. It's much better to feel comfortable that you made the call and not have somebody die in the house next to you because nobody's checked in on them for 3 months, and do it anonymously than do it. So nobody should feel compelled that they have to identify themselves.
okay, let's give some numbers so people can call. Of course, as Brian just said, you call 911 if you suspect something. If you suspect abuse, call Adult Protective Services. It's 24 hours a day, 240-777-3000.
Right.
I'll say it again, 240-777-3000, in case somebody was trying to watch QVC and not writing this very important piece of information. The non-emergency number again, 301-279-8000. Okay. Well, we're going to take this show, wrap it up, and then we're going to go to another show where you can watch more information on the financial aspect and other aspect of elder abuse. So I want to thank Debbie Feinstein and Brian Roslin of the State's Attorney's Office. And don't forget to visit Connecting Our Community, the blog, at mymcmedia.org. And that's for more information or to see this show online. In the meantime, I'm Karen Allen. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in part 2.